Improve learning in organizations, how? Let me take that back to what. What does the question mean? What are we really interested in with improving learning in organizations? Improving the performance of the organization, that is enterprise performance, competitiveness, increasing how the ability of knowledge to be shared so that innovation is improved in the organization, or improving kind of the social organization, the way people work together so that practices are enhanced and that the organization is more sustainable. Often I think in organizational learning theory, a lot of the focus in the last 20 years has really ostensibly been driven toward improving organizational competitiveness, kind of a market-oriented approach. I really think we need a more humanistic or humane approach toward the latter concept of improving learning in organizations. So
I think a lot of what we're doing here at Overlap really embodies some of the principles that I would think are critical to learning in organizations. I think there's an openness that has to be built into organizations that allows for reflection, for thinking about things that aren't normally part of your normal work stream or core responsibilities. I'm reminded of, I guess, Google's mandate that you have to spend 20% of your time doing something that's totally unrelated to what you're working on right now. I don't know if it's 20 or not, but I think that's a great principle that you can actually embed into an organization, into your human resource practices that forces a kind of openness and creativity. So I think finding structures to create that openness and reflection is critical. I think another critical design element is probably what I might call diversity. That's cross-sector, cross-disciplinary, germination of ideas, something that some of us take for granted and would never be without. But I think in order to embed that into organizations that see themselves as very focused or very much part of one sector, that would take some work to actually help somebody understand why neuroscience is relevant to product development or whatever it might be. So infusing organizations with difference in perspective, difference in sectoral or disciplinary approach, I think is critical.
I would say that almost no learning happens in training. That training does not provide learning, it just simply doesn't. That really, learning is really about pairing people together in organizations and taking individuals and forcibly placing them into circumstances where they are forced to do something that is uncomfortable with them. That takes a certain amount of prep. There are times where I have to sit down with employees and say to them, yes, I know you're not comfortable with this, I know this is not your strong suit, but this is what I need you to do, and then I just simply put them in the circumstance, and then they will learn.
We have what we call open design sessions where we take a design challenge that a particular project team is working on, bring everybody into the room to try to solve that design problem. And what that does is it allows, you learn stuff, right? It's a way of learning new things, new methods. You bring your information, other people bring theirs. I mean, I think to kind of answer the question, improve learning in organizations, at least in our experience, it's to do more to tap into what's already there and enable, kind of create safe spaces for shared learning and understanding. Conversation, activity has been important for us.
What I would call the humanistic integration of a well-functioning organization, that people more than get along, that they have an understanding in the organization of their workplace as communities of practice, of communities of associates that they really trust, respect, and have some authentic relationship with.
One of the primary things that enables learning is to have a feedback mechanism. You know, so if you don't know what you know, if there's no way to take a success or a failure and feed it back into the process and then iterate the process so that it now addresses what was learned by the success or the failure, then as a whole the organism or the entity doesn't learn. So I work at Yahoo and I work on this design pattern library, and it is a deliberate attempt to capture and share things that people know and have learned, so that new people and or just people who are somewhere else inside the organization can look to this common central point and at least build off of the shared body of knowledge.
That's a good question. Peter, are there any rules for this, or is this like Kelvin
We're kind of
ball?
just making the rules up as we go along, as the game sort of. I think the game itself is kind of dictating the rules to us.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll watch with that in mind, and we'll see what happens.
I think the only rule we have so far is that it has to be fun.
The culture is such that forking is an act of love. It's saying, I like what you've done enough.
The iconography is even like
yeah, it's a heart.
Yeah.
That I'm going to take your work and use it as my fundamental building blocks to build something else entirely. And it's not about saying, oh, what you're doing is stupid. It's saying, this is great, and I'm going to build on it further. And you can have branches. And it actually creates a much more dynamic and organic sort of ecosystem, because that act is
trace back
the
lineage.
And so that's right. And that's one of the big differences as well in organizations where there's a desire, there's sort of like this management topology where someone's got to be responsible and take, the risk and all this stuff, and then they get all the credit. And in fact, if you make the credit horizontal and you allow everybody to take credit for everyone else's pieces and to fork it and then patch it and then pass it back up the stack, then that little branch that originally historically might have been thought of as a big FU now becomes the thing that actually made that project great, which then can help, again, create that perpetual motion.
As well as working with people one-on-one to say, well, what's on your radar? What are you interested in doing? And then looking for opportunities, especially with clients where we have a longer-term relationship with, and we can say, hey, let's take a little bit of time and try something, and maybe we'll try it. And if we don't think it works, we're not going to bill you for it. We have a few relationships like that. Or we just try it on our own, and we don't ever get paid for it, but that we start to get comfortable enough that we can use it again. So, but bringing those things together is a big challenge.
With Facebook being an example, a very common example that most of us, I don't know who us is, but a lot of people now have signed up for Facebook. My dad recently signed up for Facebook, and that tells you something. And so for some people, that's either their first experience or their most recent experience of what I would call a social interface, a place where you sort of project an idea of yourself into the system, and literally by signing up, by registering, but making a profile, decorating it, choosing a name, choosing a picture. So that starts to be you inside. Like if it's a game, that's the token on the board that represents you, and everybody else gets one as well. And then there are these opportunities for the individual people or the representations of people in the system to create connections to each other and to identify things they want to do together, or to comment on what other people are already doing, or help people do things, or form groups, or come up with projects. And I think there are opportunities there to sort of make sort of a shadow or parallel structure alongside the official structure.
To know when they see a problem, hey, this is something that we should talk to those guys about.
See, I think that is one of the killer business apps, because if you help the customer learn how to do something, they're coming back. And actually, a lot of the methods of learning scale very well. So you can offer things for not a whole lot of incremental cost.
Right.
Organizations are like any living organism. I mean, the word organization and the word organism are closely related. And the thing about any organism is it's got to be growing or it dies. And people have probably heard this before. If something isn't growing, then it's beginning to die at least. And improving and learning and movement in organizations is part of growth. Growth doesn't happen without pain, and growth doesn't happen without change and discomfort and a lot of things, especially ambiguity. Growth is always a question of what's certain and uncertain.